Hey, it's Chris Duker for geeknerdnet.com, and I am very excited to be joined by writer Jeremy Holt. Jeremy has a new book coming out on May 26th at your local comic shop. It's called Made in Korea, published by Image Comics. The artist is George Schall, and the letter is Adam Wollet. So, Jeremy, hello. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So, I reached out to you obviously to set this up, and again after reading some posts about the book, and this is now probably over a month ago, and it from what I've read, it just sounds really cool. I know I'm going to pick it up. Can you give us, people watching, listening, what have you, give a rundown on the book? And I did listen to a couple of your interviews you've done through other radio and other places, and just more of the backstory there is kind of neat, and we'll get to that, but give us a quick rundown on the book.
Sure. It's basically an artificial intelligence story focusing on identity and adoption. I basically have always felt that a good AI story is rooted in an adoption story. And I've just never seen anyone tackle that head on. So as a transracial adoptee, I decided that this was a perfect opportunity to both explore my own identity that I've been exploring creatively in all my books, but this time doing it through the lens of science fiction.
Nice, I love it. And I mean, I'm sure when you have a book like this, and you had mentioned on, I think I saw it on Twitter, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I hope I'm not, when you have your career's spanned so many years, and then you get picked up by your book gets picked up by Image. What kind of, I mean, I know the feeling is probably obviously pretty great, and many other words you could think of to describe it, but I'll let you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get in with Image for 12 years now. So I've had publishing success elsewhere. I did several books with Inside Comics, and I've done small backup stories here and there. But yeah, I mean, Image was the holy grail for me, and I kind of gave up on the idea of ever landing something with them after pitching, I don't know, maybe over a dozen stories at this point. Yeah. And it took longer than expected, but they eventually went for it. And this was back in 2018.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Talk about the series and for Main Korea. And I apologize, I should know this by now, but is it a mini, is it ongoing, is it a collected? Give me the rundown on that, please.
It is a 6-issue miniseries. George and I have ideas for a second and third arc, but we need to see how the first arc does before we commit to doing those. But right now it is a miniseries at 6 issues.
Fantastic. Can you delve a bit more into the story? I mean, I know you said you pulled a bit from personal experience. Talk a bit about that.
Sure. Actually, I've realized that, did I not send you the first issue? Because I'm feeling really bad right now. Because I've sent it to so many people and I've lost track. And if you haven't read the first issue, I feel really guilty right now because I think you'd be more informed. But yeah, so basically,
that's fair.
I think we all love, or people who love science fiction love the idea of a true AI system. What is the human consciousness? What does it look like? How does it act? And obviously there are films that have explored this idea. Most notably probably is Steven Spielberg's AI that uses a child. But I wanted to tell this in a more modern world, in a more diverse world, in a world dealing with conflicts that in the present day of the story, our conflicts we're dealing with now are in the past for these characters. But I basically set it in a world where children are no longer being born. So what emerges is this sudden void where people want to raise kids. Parenthood becomes this very exclusive, very expensive endeavor. And so what emerges is a tech race. And these tech companies want to see who can create the most lifelike children. And this company in South Korea happens to do it first, and they do it the best. So they are at the forefront of this, and they are supplying the world with these surrogate children known as proxies. And so I kind of wanted to explore parenthood from an almost exclusive perspective of adoption,
Yeah.
which is a complicated issue.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I look forward to reading the first issue, and then that's,
I will send it to you right after this.
I mean, if that doesn't get someone to want to pick this up and read it for many different layers, right? It's going to touch, and it sounds like from what you've just said, it's going to touch people on many different areas of life, and while also at the same time, it's art, not necessarily imitating life because of the concept, but I mean, the feelings behind it can definitely come into personal lives, right? And that's what I love about it is you have really you've got that human aspect in an AI, partial AI world. I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the story evolves over 6 issues, and when you have these types of characters, I'm sure from everything you've just described, it's not only going to be an evolution of the children in the story, the proxies, as you put
I
it,
wanted to explore just what it means to be a parent. And I think that there are very different ways of being a parent, whether that's adoptive or biological. And I was pulling a lot of my own experiences from various family members that, siblings that have kids, my own experiences of being raised by my parents, um, connecting with other Korean adoptees and discussing their experiences. And I wanted to specifically create a protagonist that is Korean because I think representation is really important. I think
Mhm.
that the fact that this book is coming out when it is, considering it was delayed uh, due to the pandemic,
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting timing that Hollywood is recognizing more POCs. Bong Joon-ho's Parasite winning Best Picture last year, and then
Yeah.
Lee Isaac Chung and Chloe Zhao getting nominations this year, and
Mhm.
so it's an exciting time to be telling stories that don't exclusively involve white people.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I love that. I think again, you're right. Talking to real world issues that are happening right now, um, and how does it teach someone a different perspective or an outlook they've never had before, and really an insight into a world that maybe they've never seen, right? Even in an AI type comic book world with these AI kids, these proxies. I do like that. I love that connection. So thanks for sharing that.
Of course, yeah. I hope that you know when people read this, that they walk away feeling something, whether it's being exposed to a new concept or seeing themselves in some of the characters or seeing themselves in some of the experiences. That is ultimately why I write stories, and I think why stories are have been told since the dawn of time because it is a connective thread between people.
Mhm.
And I think we need stories more than ever, considering the isolation of the pandemic and just how the normalcy that we all miss is changing rapidly. And sometimes it's nice to just get lost in a good story.
Perfectly put. Perfectly put. Can you talk about? Have you had experiences recently? You've got some other great works under your belt. Congratulations on those up to now, and you have obviously Made in Korea. Have you had recent interactions with people reaching out to you saying, about their experiences now that they kind of learn a bit about the book and the reasons and the life lessons you put behind it?
Yeah, actually, the book got announced in early February, and I've actually received, I'd say, a handful of emails from specifically Korean adoptees that have heard about it and wanted to reach out and just say that they're really excited to see a story that was um, very intimately their own in a
Mhm.
way that's I don't think we've really seen in comics. And I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who has a new image series out called The Good Asian.
I just
And
picked that up last week.
yeah, and we were talking about representation in comics and how we actually don't know a lot of other Asian writers specifically in comics that started in comics and didn't come from another field. I mean, we were able to name a lot of successful comic book creators, both artists and writers, but almost all of them have come from other industries. So it was kind of interesting to think that myself and Pornsak might be the only ones, even though he doesn't consider it because he started as an editor. But you know, I just want to provide representation, and um, I want kids and even adults to be able to say, "Hey, this I align with," because I'm not having to go the extra steps of imagining myself being part of the story. I can literally see myself as part of
Hmm,
the story.
I like that. Yeah, you're in the business. You've been in the business for a while. Obviously, we touched on that. Um, does it feel? Does this one feel um, like a different level for you, or is it sort of each book has their own place along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say yes, just because of the prestige that Image carries with it.
Mm,
But the actual making of the comic is really no different than any other book I've assembled with my creative teams.
right.
Uh, it's just a little different because of the response I've been getting. And it reminds me of this very stark contrast uh, when you're making comics where it's very solitary. I mean, you have the collaboration of your team, but when you all are off doing the parts that you need to do to make this thing a reality, it's very isolating. So, you know, when a book comes out and it's in print and I'm holding it, it might be years from when I originally conceived the idea to when I'm holding it in my hands. And by the point that I'm holding it in my hands, I'm already moving on to something else. So it's making comics in a sense is a very passive experience because it takes so long.
Yeah.
But with doing a book at Image, I've been getting such immediate feedback before the book has even released that it reminds me that you know there is readers out there that make it a very active experience of making comics, and that's really really nice to feel connected and that you know stuff I'm putting out actually is getting noticed.
That's I love it. That's fantastic. Well, Jeremy Holt, let people know where they can reach you if they want to reach out to you, whether it be Instagram or Twitter or through your site. And then, yeah, and I mean, I'll give the last word to you. So if I've talked too much, I apologize. I'm really loving our chat, and thank you so much for joining me. But again, let people know where they can reach out to you.
Sure. People can find me on all social media platforms at Jeremy Holt Books, and that is also my website, jeremyholtbooks.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me.